So, welcome everyone. Thank you for your attendance this afternoon. So this is the sales session within our Cloud Practice Builder hybrid work track. So today I am joined by Edd Dale, who's going to take us through, as I said, the sales session on like the AVD and the Windows 365. So handing over to you, Edd.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Sabs. And good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all so much for coming along to this session today, talking about all the great stuff with AVD and Windows 365. Now, if you do have any questions during the session, you can either take yourself off mute and just jump in with your question, and one of us on the call will attempt to give you a satisfactory answer. Alternatively, you can put your questions into the chat as well. So if you want to do that, absolutely fine. Please ask away. And if there are any questions that we are unable to answer during this session, one of us will get back to you after the session has concluded. So what are we going to talk about today? So because we're talking about Azure Virtual Desktop, we might have a bit of just a high level overview of what is Azure and what are the benefits of utilizing Azure for things such as digital transformation and growing organizations. We're going to look at what Azure Virtual Desktop is, the reasons customers are moving to virtualization, and the ways that customers, can benefit from utilizing AVD. And then we're going to have a look at Windows 365. So we're going to look at what Windows 365 is, once again, how can it benefit customers, and this whole relatively new cloud PC model. What are the business benefits and solutions that it can bring to customers? And of course, how does Windows 365 stack up against AVD? Why would customers choose one over the other? So into the session we go, and the first thing we're going to talk about is Azure real quick. So I guess a question which we can start this session off with is, what is Azure? I don't suppose anyone here would like to give us their thoughts on what they believe Azure. If you had a customer ring you up and say, hey, what's this Azure stuff I've heard so much about? What would you tell them? Would anyone like to share that?
Public cloud.
Public cloud, yes, absolutely. It is Microsoft's cloud. That's exactly what it is. Now, Microsoft describe Azure like this: that Azure is a cloud platform, just like Matthew said, that enables businesses to be able to build, deploy, and manage applications and services on a consumption basis. Now, I do just have a short video which I'd like to show you just to illustrate the size and the scale of Azure, because that is one of its key strengths, that it is a large public cloud that anyone can utilize, where you can spin up unlimited resources across 140 different countries around the world, giving unmatched scale and capability to any organization. So have a quick look at this. So there we go. That's the introduction into, again, that size and scale that Azure can offer customers. Now, just to show that in a diagram, Azure has around 60 data center regions worldwide. Most data center regions consist of anywhere between 2 to 16 data centers per region. So there is well over 100 data centers around the world. And just to put that into perspective in how large that scale is, if you were to take all of the infrastructure or data centers that AWS has, Amazon Web Services, and everything that Google has, and put it all together, it's still not as much as what Microsoft offers. So we are offering customers, again, that ability to be able to have that unmatched and unlimited scale wherever your customers' workloads are, whatever their compute requirements are. Azure can service those customers. Now, why do all this? Well, it does come down to things such as digital transformation. Now, digital transformation is one of those topics which I'm sure we've heard a lot about in the past. A lot of LinkedIn posts and everything, especially during COVID, around how organizations are digitally transforming to meet the needs of the world today. Now, some people might consider digital transformation, such as going paperless, for example, but to what ends? Why digitally transform? Well, Microsoft believes the keys to digital transformation lie around these 4 pillars. These are the reasons that customers look to digitally transform. So the first one, being able to engage your customers. The most successful companies in the world know that if you can engage your customers in a more streamlined, dynamic, or efficient way, then your likelihood for success as an organization is going to improve. Digital transformation can also be used for empowering employees, and especially pertinent to the topics we're going to be talking about today, giving employees the ability to work from any device, any location securely, having that freedom to really utilize this modern hybrid workplace that we find ourselves in. You can use digital transformation to streamline or optimize operations using tools like artificial intelligence and machine learning for getting rid of repetitive tasks. Again, being able to automate those with tools included in the M365 and Azure Stack, again, can make businesses much more efficient. And transforming your products, or at least how those products are delivered to your customers, can all significantly help organizations. So again, when that topic of digital transformation does come up with organizations, what is it they're trying to achieve with digital transformation? What is it? What is their end game? And again, looking around these pillars, Azure has tools that can absolutely help. And the reason customers are migrating and modernizing within Azure are some of these key reasons here. The fact that Azure can offer enterprise grade infrastructure for far less. Now, obviously, we're talking about CapEx versus OpEx. The fact that we mentioned right at the beginning that Azure is a model where it's all a consumption basis, where you pay for what you use. You don't necessarily need to have a huge amount of upfront capital to start or grow an organization. So being able to get your hands on, like I said, that enterprise grade infrastructure for far less than what it could potentially cost buying physical tin is going to be a huge advantage. Being able to innovate faster with a managed platforms and tools designed to help organizations meet the challenges that organizations are meeting nowadays, things such as security, for example. And speaking of security, Microsoft has one of the most trusted public clouds currently available. Now, Microsoft is actually, and it comes as a surprise to some, Microsoft is actually a security company. A lot of people don't think of Microsoft as a security company. You know, when you think of Microsoft, you might think of things like Word, PowerPoint, Excel, not necessarily security. But according to Forrester and Gartner, Microsoft is one of the world's best security companies. That makes Azure the only cloud manufactured by a recognized security firm. And that, again, is a very powerful message to be able to take out to customers, utilizing a cloud that is built by a recognized security company. And of course, hybrid flexibility as well. We're not saying to customers that you have to move everything into the cloud. Customers that want to keep a mixture of on-prem resources and cloud resources, well, absolutely. Customers do have the ability to have the best of both worlds. And the triggers to listen out to when you're having conversations with customers around where cloud migration and modernization could become a key topic of discussion is if any of these topics come up. If you're talking to customers and they talk about security, if they talk about capacity, if they're talking about maybe legacy infrastructure, where it be servers or apps, if they're talking about operational efficiency, business IT, or resilience, then absolutely this is an Azure conversation waiting to happen. And of course, there is one right at the bottom there, remote work models. So again, if you've got customers that are looking about how they can better service their employees, to enable them to be flexible, to be able to work from anywhere, but of course do all this in a secure manner, then again, this is absolutely an Azure conversation, specifically an Azure virtual desktop conversation. Now, before I jump into all this, has anyone here already been doing much with Azure virtual desktop?
Yeah, we put a few quotes and solutions out there, yeah.
Fantastic. So how have those been going? The quotes, do they translate into sales, or are we still waiting at the moment?
Yeah, we've got a few approvals and a few pending at the moment. So yeah, I think it's
Fantastic.
been quite well received.
Excellent, brilliant. And what was the key reason, Damon, for the customers wanting virtualization in the first place? What were they trying to achieve with this?
I think it was more of the existing equipment was coming end of life, and naturally we're just looking to drive all clients towards the cloud now, sort of the sort of some cloud services first. So yeah, I think that was when we analysed their requirements. That was the best way forward.
Fantastic.
Also changes in working patterns and how people are looking to consume their IT, really.
Excellent. Brilliant. No, it's great answers there. Absolutely fantastic. And again, these are the conversations that we want to be having with customers. So, sorry, bear me 2 seconds. I do just have a short video on Azure Virtual Desktop just to introduce it. I should just mention on this video, Microsoft never remade this video. Some of you will know that Azure Virtual Desktop, a little while ago, this was known as Windows Virtual Desktop. They changed the name to Azure Virtual Desktop to differentiate it from other Windows Virtual Desktop offerings that are on the market. So again, just a short introduction into Azure Virtual Desktop. Have a quick look at this. Come on, video. There we go.
In this time of digital transformation, businesses are shifting to a modern desktop to empower their people. But not all employees sit in an office, use only one device, or always work from secure locations. What if you could deliver a modern desktop experience to every worker, everywhere? Introducing Windows Virtual Desktop, the full Windows experience virtualized in the cloud. Always up to date and available on any device. Optimized for Office 365, so you can deliver the most productive experience to your users. Delivered on Azure, so IT can quickly virtualize and deploy modern and legacy desktops. The best virtual desktop experience, delivered on Azure. Windows Virtual Desktop.
Fantastic. So there we go. That is Azure Virtual Desktop. So what is Azure Virtual Desktop? Well, as I said in the video, it is a remote desktop virtualization service, which is all hosted within Azure. Now, it is the only virtual desktop infrastructure which is designed, built, and optimized for Microsoft 365. So giving users a unmatched experience on AVD versus other VDI providers. It's ideal for customers that, again, have people who are working remotely outside of the office, but still need to be able to connect and work on secure workloads. Azure Virtual Desktop can also be optimized to make sure that any work done in the virtual session remains on the cloud. Workloads and images, anything couldn't be copied onto the physical device itself. So again, it makes it ideal for customers who are looking to really manage security requirements with a remote workforce. And of course, partnering this up with certain devices, LTE enabled devices, this does give customers to have that ultimate flexibility to be able to access their virtual desktop, their application services, whatever it might be, and work on a device from absolutely any location. So a huge amount of benefits for customers. And it's also designed and built and optimized for migrating over current RDS desktops as well. And I'm going to talk about the benefits of Azure Virtual Desktop versus RDS in just a moment. And also with Azure Virtual Desktop, solutions can be deployed and scaled within minutes. So things can be done very quickly. So customers that want the ultimate in agility, then Azure Virtual Desktop, once again, is absolutely a conversation that we should be having. Now, many customers currently can access Azure Virtual Desktop from their existing licenses. So some of you might have customers who are utilizing Microsoft 365, whether it be things like E3, the academic SKUs, or Business Premium. So any of those M365 licenses means you can utilize Azure Virtual Desktop for no additional licensing cost. The only thing customers would have to pay for would be the consumption costs of the virtual machine. Well, how much is that going to be? Well, that's a kind of one of those how long is a piece of string conversations. With Azure, as I'm sure a lot of you know, there are literally hundreds of virtual machines available. In fact, some of the world's most powerful virtual machines available in the public cloud, you will find only on Azure, effectively guaranteeing customers whatever their workload is, there is a virtual machine within Azure to satisfy that need. So if they have one of the following licenses, M365 or Windows 10 or 11 licenses, they can use Azure Virtual Desktop. They get the license included, but they only have to pay for the consumption, the per hour costs of the virtual machines. And that can be a significant cost saving, especially when you consider some of the licensing costs of some other existing VDI solutions, where you could be paying anywhere from £7 to £14 per user per month just for that virtual desktop license, and then all the compute and everything bundled on top of it. So for some customers, this can actually make a significant cost saving by utilizing AVD. Now, some customers also might be using traditional RDS solutions as well. Don't know if anyone has got any customers on a traditional RDS deployments, anything like that currently. Anyone managing RDS environments for customers?
Yeah.
Yeah, you have. Fantastic. Have you had the AVD conversation with them, Matthew?
Yeah, starting to attack them now, and some have already migrated. So yeah.
Fantastic. So and what is your angle of attack when you're having that conversation? You go to an RDS customer, you're pitching them as your virtual desktop. What's the key angle you're utilizing there?
Just modernization, I guess, and trying to make them aware of obviously the differences of what they are using now to compare to what RDS is kind of built for, really. You know, Teams and so on doesn't behave well in RDS, and AVD it works better. Yeah, stuff like that, really, I guess.
Absolutely. Well, and again, those are brilliant points. Those are absolutely fantastic points to be highlighting with customers. For those of you that maybe haven't had any of those RDS versus AVD conversations, here's just a kind of a side-by-side of a traditional RDS deployment versus Azure Virtual Desktop, and some of the key elements of conversation we can use with customers. So for example, one of the ones is around licensing with a traditional RDS deployment. Look at the amount of licenses that you need for an RDS deployment. So first of all, you need an RDS license with software assurance. You then also need a server OS license. You then need a version of Office compatible with RDS. So there's 3 licenses you're going to need to get started. Whereas with AVD, all the licensing you require to get started with Azure Virtual Desktop is all included in an M365 SKU, starting off with M365 Business Premium, for example. And that starts from around, if you're going to do it on a monthly, £16.60 per user per month. So it's a single license. So again, it's simplifying licenses, it's simplifying costs, it's simplifying management. So those are kind of three kind of key things we can hone in on if we're going to have that initial conversation. Matthew also mentioned earlier that some applications don't play well in RDS environments, calling out things such as Teams, for example, because when you use RDS, you're using what you call a Windows desktop experience. It's not really Windows. It's a desktop experience. Now, Microsoft created a brand new version of Windows 10 and Windows 11 for Azure Virtual Desktop. So none of those limitations exist in terms of utilizing M365, Teams, OneDrive, all of these tools. Again, they work just like they would on the physical desktop. So it does give customers the best possible experience. Also, with traditional RDS, you can see here the user profile disks have limited functionality and they don't support things such as OneDrive or index Outlook searching. Now, some of you will know that Microsoft acquired a company called FX Logics, which is basically a new profile container technology, which does eliminate these limitations. So again, things like index search, OneDrive, again, it works just like it would on the desktop. And lastly, infrastructure roles are all hosted and managed by Microsoft. So again, not having to worry about people having to manage RDS servers or anything like that, managing the physical tin. Again, everything, all of that infrastructure management is all handed over as a service to Microsoft. So again, this is something which people don't have to spend time, effort, skills, expertise, money on handling. So a lot of key advantages. So if you do have customers on traditional RDS deployments, is it time to modernize? Is it time to look at moving those RDS environments, migrating them into Azure Virtual Desktop? And like I said, a copy of this slide deck will go out to you. So don't worry if you can't remember all of those bullet points, or if you're frantically writing down notes, you will have this stuff for reference. So why virtualize? And especially, why now? Well, I don't need to go on about this too much. We've all seen how the world has changed a huge amount over the last few years, given the events of COVID and the effects that that had on the way that businesses operate, the way that employees work, the way that devices and IT infrastructure is managed. We've seen a huge shakeup over the last few years, and a lot of organizations are now looking to really modernize. And again, not just modernize from a standpoint of making their business more effective, but then from a resiliency standpoint. I'm sure a lot of you will know that when COVID, first really kicked off in early 2020, there were a lot of businesses that were caught short. They didn't have the tools or the infrastructure in place to manage this unprecedented event that we were experiencing. So a lot of organizations want to make sure that they do have that resiliency, that God forbid we were to wind up in another lockdown. Let's hope that doesn't happen. But if the worst did happen, that they have got the processes, the tools, the cloud infrastructure in place, that the impact on their business would be minimized. And looking at some stats on how things have changed since we've emerged from the pandemic and moved into this new world of hybrid work, organizations, again, they want to adopt digital solutions in order to keep their people connected, collaborating, whether they're working from home or at the office or anywhere in between. And flexible work lets us do more, opening possibilities for people everywhere. And people don't want this flexibility to end. And this has been reflected in the data, surveys of staff. People enjoy having this level of flexibility. People have found themselves being more effective when they have that ability to work in this flexible hybrid manner. And recently, Microsoft published its annual work trend index with findings from a study of over, I think it was around 30,000 people in 31 countries. 73% of workers say that they want flexible remote work options. And at the same time, 67% of employees tell us that they want more in-person collaboration with their teams. And we've also heard from 80% of managers saying that they expect more flexible work from home policies to be emerging. So what we're basically seeing here is employees saying they want more flexible work options, but at the same time, they also want more in-person collaboration. And this is kind of the hybrid work paradox that we've encountered there. People wanting in-person collaboration, but at the same time, flexible remote work options. So again, how can we achieve this? Now, as I'm sure a lot of you know firsthand, the shift to moving to hybrid work, it does create new opportunities, but it has created a huge amount of challenges. Now, things look different when new employees need to be onboarded from either across the country or across the world. Distributed teams need to be connected, specialized workloads need to be enabled, and new projects need to be scaled up. Not only do companies need to get employees set up, but they also need to be prepared to provide support and respond rapidly to changing environments while still maintaining business continuity. And while managing this, you'll also need to ensure that all the data is secure and safe from large or small threats. And it's a challenge to address these needs with agility whilst keeping overhead costs at a minimum, so you don't sacrifice productivity or compromise security or see costs getting out of control. But effectively, what customers are asking for currently, they want that ability to work effectively from anywhere, from any device and any location. Our customers need high levels of security and compliance. People want to have flexibility around devices and BYOD, bring your own device. And of course, let's not forget IT administrators. They need the ability to be able to manage, deploy, and scale these solutions and be able to do it quickly. Now, some of the areas in which we've seen certain customer industry verticals really utilize virtualization and really kind of jump on the AVD bandwagon are companies that fit around these kinds of models. Customers that are heavily involved in maintaining high standards of security, compliance, and regulation. So maybe think financial services, healthcare, government, local gov, councils, anyone that falls into that. But to be honest, security, that is a broad topic because any customer should be focused on security and regulations. With GDPR and everything else, everyone is affected by security. So again, security is a hot topic. An elastic workforce as well. You might have customers that might have mergers or acquisitions where two companies join together, a bit like TD Synnex, for example, or even short-term employees. If you have any customers that during certain points of the year, they're bringing in seasonal staff, for example. Remote employees, people working out and about, so BYOD and mobile workers, call centers as well. This is another big one. I don't know if anyone has any customers that have call centers, but a lot of call centers in the past previously have relied on things such as thin clients, for example. So again, could it be potentially more cost effective to use things like Azure Virtual Desktop rather than RDS infrastructure and thin clients? Could there be a cost saving there? Specialized workloads as well. As I mentioned earlier, with Azure Virtual Desktop, we have got the widest range of virtual machines available in any public cloud. So if it's workloads that require high performance computing or GPU enabled workloads, again, there are solutions that are available in Azure Virtual Desktop. And again, like we said, because Azure Virtual Desktop is a consumption based model, if these are workloads which are only being done maybe a couple of times a week or a few times a month, Could it be more effective to do these workloads in a virtual machine where you pay for it for a few hours, then you turn it off, and then when you come back to it a month later, you turn it on, do the work, turn it off? Could that potentially be more cost effective? And of course, running legacy applications as well. Believe it or not, there is still a huge amount of people out there in the world still utilizing Windows 7. Now, as you know, Windows 7 is not supported anymore by Microsoft. You can buy extended support directly from Microsoft, but again, that is quite expensive. So you can use Azure Virtual Desktop to spin up a Windows 7 environment, which is fully security patched, meaning if it's legacy applications that for some reason don't run in Windows 10 or Windows 11, and that's the reason you've got customers still using a Windows 7 device for certain workloads, could it be more secure for your customers to move those workloads into a Windows 7 virtual desktop, somewhere where the workload is protected by the cloud, it's secure, it's patched, it's up to date, and they can still utilize those legacy applications? So I want you to have a think about some of the customers that you have, some of the customers that you've been talking to. And again, their needs around security, their workforce. Do they have remote employees? Do they have any specialized workloads that they use? Whereas your virtual desktop could actually be a really good cost-effective way for customers to be able to manage those workloads. Now, there is, if you haven't done much with Azure Virtual Desktop in the past, there is actually a really useful website, and this is also good for Windows 365 as well. The website is called Microsoft Customer Stories. So if you go onto Bing, other search engines are available, and go to customers.microsoft.com, you can look at customer case studies and you can filter it by country, by product, industry type, seat count, how many employees have they got. And you can find really specific case studies around certain products to customers that might be similar to yours. And I highly recommend checking this out because it can be a really useful sales tool. And again, this goes for Windows 365 as well. You can read customer case studies where you can see some of the pain points that customers were having and how these Microsoft products helped solve those pain points. So if you are still relatively new to Azure Virtual Desktop or Windows 365, or maybe you're dealing with a customer, a different type of customer that you haven't dealt with before, have a look on Microsoft Customer Stories. You might be able to find a similar example. It might give you new ideas of where you can steer that conversation. It could, you could learn new precedents that you didn't know about and then utilize that in your sales conversation, help you find new angles to solve this customer's current problems. And I just want to tell you a quick story of one of the customers that I saw on here for Azure Virtual Desktop. It was for the NHS. And this is a bit of a COVID case study, but still a really good story. Effectively, there was this hospital in Kent, and they had around 200 admin workers based at this hospital. And when COVID really kicked off, all of these admin workers needed to be sent home. Now, the problem was all of these admin workers had been using desktops, and they weren't allowed to take those desktops home with them because they contained patient medical records, sensitive information, personally identifiable data, all kinds of stuff. So due to regulations, those desktops could not leave the premises. So bit of a problem for this hospital. 200 people who have to be sent home, but they can't take their work devices with them. What was the NHS going to do? Well, they considered buying everyone laptops. They quickly decided against this for a couple of reasons. Reason number one, it was going to cost a fortune to buy everyone a laptop. Reason number two, those laptops would have taken ages to configure and deploy. And lastly, the reason they didn't do it, I don't know if anyone remembers trying to get their hands on a laptop in like early 2020. Yeah, exactly. You couldn't do it. So they decided that was not going to be the solution. Instead, they went to Azure Virtual Desktop, Within 24 hours, they were able to spin up virtual desktop environments for all 200 staff. And then they just told everyone to go home. Just go home and use whatever device you have at home, whether it's your personal laptop, desktop, iPad, Android tablet, it doesn't matter. Any internet enabled device that has a web browser, that's all it needed to be. And that's exactly what they did. People were able to then go home and use their personal devices to work on very confidential information. And this was fine because all of that data is secured in the cloud. There was no way an employee would be able to copy off data from the virtual session onto the physical device. And of course, it was all being managed centrally by the NHS through their Azure cloud portal. So this met a lot of goals for the NHS, not only from a cost perspective, but enabling a remote workforce very quickly to work in a secure manner. Now, I know that's an NHS example, and some of you maybe don't have healthcare customers, but the crux of the story remain the same for pretty much any customer, enabling a remote workforce to be able to work from any device, any location securely. That's the crux of what Azure Virtual Desktop is giving to customers. And of course, that speed of deployment as well. Another case study from a government customer, they highlighted that they were able to expand their remote users from 200 to 5,000 overnight during COVID. It's that speed, that agility. That's one of the key reasons that customers move to Azure, by the way. It's not always about cost. A lot of customers like Azure because of its agility, the ability to scale up and down and do it fast. And that is exactly what we are offering customers here. Any questions on anything that we've been through so far before we go on to the next piece? No, we all good? Okie doke. Like I said, if you do have any questions at any point, please feel free just to shout out your question, or you can put your hand up or put your question into the chat. Right. So continuing on. So reasons customers can benefit from Azure Virtual Desktop. We've already spoken about how it can enable remote workforces, how it can enable productivity from any device and any location. But of course, there is security. Now, I mentioned earlier that Azure does have some of the highest security standards of any other public cloud. Now, again, there is a very useful website which you can check out. It's called the Microsoft Trust Center. Now, this website gives a lot of information into all the different levels of security and compliance standards that Microsoft meets across both Azure and M365. And of course, you can look at this across global, industry, regional. You'll notice the US government have got their whole own category. But as you can see, pretty much a lot of the key standards for both global, industry, and regional are met by Azure. And of course, I'm not expecting everyone to have an encyclopedic knowledge of what all of these standards mean. And that's why the Trust Center is great, because on the Trust Center, you can click on any one of these and it will tell you what that compliance means, that if you have that level of compliance, what does it actually mean? So there's some really good stuff on there. So if you are getting questions around customers' security, if they're not too sure about Microsoft, again, being a security company and protecting their data, the Microsoft Trust Center is a brilliant resource for assuring customers on everything that we do to make sure that users, devices, data, infrastructure remains secure. And the strength of Microsoft's security comes from the blended approach across the entire ecosystem. So again, the tools from M365, Azure, AVD, bringing all of this together builds a very strong ecosystem of security products. And again, this is where Microsoft really differs from a lot of its competitors. Whilst there are other companies that do fantastic work when it comes to security products, they don't have that ecosystem behind them of other tools, platforms, and applications where it's all designed to work together. And as I mentioned before, scalability is another key reason why customers should look at Azure. Now, we mentioned a couple of times now that Azure Virtual Desktop, or Azure generally, has some of the widest range of virtual virtual machines available, whether they be just for general purpose or GPU'd or HPC, high performance computing machines. So again, whatever the workload is your customer has, Azure Virtual Desktop does have a solution. Now, obviously the HPC and the GPU enabled machines, they do come at a premium cost. But again, don't forget, a lot of the times with a lot of these high performance devices, you won't be using them all day, every day. A lot of customers will use a HPC device to crunch data and do it quickly. And once they've done it, they turn it off and then they can come back to it and switch it on and use that machine, that virtual desktop, as and when they need it. So it's a huge amount of flexibility that we can give to customers with this. So from general purpose to high performance computing and everything in between. And again, we mentioned cost. Azure Virtual Desktop does work out to be one of the more cost-efficient virtual desktop infrastructures currently available because of the unique way that Microsoft can offer the licensing. The fact that if you do have M365 or Windows 10 or 11 enterprise or education licenses, you do not have to pay for a license with Azure Virtual Desktop. Just pay for the consumption costs of the virtual machine. Now, one of the other areas in which Azure Virtual Desktop can be hugely beneficial to customers, especially customers who already have existing VDI environments. For example, customers who are utilizing Citrix or VMware. Well, Azure is designed to work alongside both Citrix and VMware. So we are not saying that you have to go out to customers and go, oh, get rid of your Citrix or your VMware environments and replace it all with Azure Virtual Desktop. I mean, of course you can if you want. But customers who have invested significant capital into building their existing Citrix or VMware environments and are pretty reluctant to get rid of it, effectively, we can create a multi-cloud environment where customers can keep Citrix or VMware and manage it all from a single pane of glass. So it doesn't have to be one or the other. That flexibility that customers can build on their existing VDI infrastructure and extend out with Azure Virtual Desktop, of course, that can be done with, again, either VMware or Citrix. I don't know if anyone who is on this call has got any customers on either Citrix or VMware. Some of you might or might not, but if you do, again, there is another question to ask there. Customers who do have their existing Citrix or VMware environments, if they're looking to potentially scale that out in the future, could they do it more cost effectively with Azure Virtual Desktop? And again, remember the licensing costs and the fact that it will work seamlessly with their existing environments. So again, if that conversation does come up, if you're speaking to someone about Citrix or VMware and they're talking about scaling that solution up and out, Azure Virtual Desktop absolutely should be a conversation we're having there. Okay. Any questions on anything at all so far? No, we're all good. Okay. So the next thing I want to talk about is Windows 365. So I've already heard from a couple of you that have already been having AVD conversations and everything, and that's fantastic. But has anyone here had a conversation about Windows 365? No Windows 365 conversation. Can anyone tell me what Windows 365 is? Has anyone here heard of Windows 365?
It's dedicated cloud desktop.
Dedicated cloud desktop, fantastic. And how would you say it differs from AVD?
Well, the difference with AVD, I guess, it's AVD's multi-session on the hosts. This is a dedicated session, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. So yes, a dedicated session, and whilst it's cost effective, it's scalable, but it doesn't have the same amount of flexibility that we find with AVD. So, for example, we spoke about hybrid cloud and everything earlier, the fact that you can use VMware and Citrix alongside Azure Virtual Desktop, the way you can build your own kind of like hybrid cloud environment, the way that you can use any of the virtual machines that we currently have available within Azure. Windows 365 is a little bit different. It's a little bit more rigid in terms of what you can do, but for customers that don't necessarily need that huge amount of scale and flexibility that AVD does, they just want to empower a mobile workforce, then Windows 365 is brilliant. Sorry, Matthew, you were about to say something there.
No, all good.
Oh, sorry, I saw you come off mute for a second. I thought you were about to speak. Sorry. Okay, so let's have a look at Windows 365. Now, we hear from customers just how hard and time consuming this can be to manage, to be able to navigate all of those challenges that we spoke about earlier, and the companies that are using the tools that are available to them to solve these challenges. Now, the client PC is known and loved, is what people are most familiar with, and many larger organizations also added traditional virtualizations if they needed more scale for things like app streaming, whilst other companies found value in desktop as a service like RDS, for example. Now, these solutions help address common commercial needs, but they're not always suitable for all scenarios or resources. I mean, virtualization, that's been around for decades, and it was a game changer for many organizations. But with virtualization, it requires IT to have experience with virtualization, and some companies aren't able to do it, or they just don't want to invest in that time to, again, have that experience in virtualization. And desktop as a service, like RDS, it's a newer concept offering cloud-based operating systems, but many organizations have adopted it, and it is expected to grow. But device as a service has limited infrastructure integration. It requires learning a new provisioning flow in an admin tool, something again that's new, and again billing systems are all siloed. So we do need something new. And that's where Windows 365 comes in. Windows 365 brings this new cloud PC hybrid personal computing category to life, using the power of the cloud and the capabilities of the device to provide a full personalized Windows experience. This new Windows experience comes as organizations around the world grapple with the best ways in which to facilitate hybrid work models, and where employees are both on-site or potentially spread out across the world. The Windows 365 experience has been designed to be versatile, familiar, and productive by delivering users their personalized content, settings, and applications. It's been designed to be simple to deploy and manage from a single console, which is easy for anyone to use. Because this is made by Microsoft, it is secure by design, leaving no data on the device. And you can run this on any device, and it's optimized for the best experience on a Windows PC. And obviously with the price, it's all predictable. It's all predictable pricing, because again, you're not paying for this in the same way that you would pay for Azure Virtual Desktop, where you're paying per hour for that cost of that virtual machine. With Windows 365, it's a single monthly cost for users doing this. And lastly, it is scalable and it's resilient to be able to help support businesses today in a changing workforce where there are new needs and new business scenarios. So Windows has been at the heart of Microsoft for decades as the most fundamental and the most innovative platform for work, learning, creativity, and development. And again, Microsoft want to, again, continue on that promise with the cloud PC, with Windows 365, to give access to your apps, your content, your storage, compute, settings, everything hosted in the cloud. And the goal is to have a solution which will be loved by the people who are actually using it. And we say loved because it works. It's always ready. It's always updated. It's familiar. It works in the same way that any other desktop would work. So from an end user standpoint, people would be able to boot instantly to their cloud PC. It's not like they have to boot the machine, then fire up Windows 365. When they turn on their device, they log into it instantly. It boots straight into their cloud PC, streaming their personalized Windows experience. So all of their apps, their contents, their settings from the Microsoft Cloud to any device. Whether that device be Windows, Mac OS, iOS, Android, again, giving that same consistent experience. And Windows 365 obviously travels with your users. So again, wherever people need to be able to work, they can. There's no limitations on what devices or where they are. They can just get their work done. And they can pick up right where they left off because the state of their cloud PC remains the same, even when they switch devices. So if you were to start something on one device, you're starting a presentation or a document, whatever that might be, and then you've got to go out and you take your iPad with you, you can just pick up from where you left off on that other device. So again, just think of that flexibility, especially for a mobile workforce. Think about mobile sales teams, for example, to be able to work from their home office and then be out on the road and be able to just pick up exactly from where they left off, not necessarily having to make sure they've saved those files into OneDrive so they can access them later on. No, it's their desktop they're accessing with all of their files, folders, data. That is a huge amount of potential that gives to organizations and the way that they work. Now for IT, Windows 365 offers loads of configuration options to be able to easily scale to meet the needs of the employees of the workforce with the right processing power and storage to be able to do their job when they need it. Windows 365 makes purchasing cloud PCs easy, because one of the things you don't need with Windows 365 is you don't need a whole IT department to make it work. In fact, Windows 365 is so simple in some cases that customers can literally just buy this off the internet. Obviously, we want them to come through you guys, the experts, but Windows365.com is a website where customers can literally go and just purchase Windows 365 themselves. So one of the things that we need to think about as a channel is how we can put value around this. Some of your key USP, some of the things that you can do for your customers to enhance that experience, that value. Because value, that is the key differentiator these days in the channel. I know we all come from different organizations here, so I'm not going to ask any questions about what it is you're doing, but that is the important thing that we have to have. We have to have those key differentiators, because it can't just all be about price. Because if we do that, we end up in a race to the bottom. Who can sell this product at the lowest possible cost? And like we said, customers nowadays, they're wisening up. A lot of customers, they don't necessarily want to go for just the cheapest option. They want to go for the options that are giving them the most value. So I want you to have a think about, again, things like AVD and Windows 365. What is it you can do as a channel partner to wrap your services around specific services to make this product even better when it comes from you? And like I said, because we've got lots of different lots of different of you on this call, we won't go into what those things should be, but I do want you to have a think about that. And finally, and probably most importantly, like we said, Windows 365 is secure by design. So as we said, it's making sure that no data is saved onto the device itself. So everything is kept in the cloud. It's always up to date and building on the strength of those rich Microsoft capabilities and baselines. And Windows 365, it takes away those layers of security complexity, because you're dealing with something which is already hosted in the cloud, you don't necessarily need all of these extra layers of security. So again, that's another question for customers. How much are you currently spending on endpoint security? Have you got a mobile workforce where you're hemorrhaging hundreds or even thousands of pounds every single month, keeping those devices safe? Is moving to something like Windows 365, could that cut out some of those costs? Sorry.
So how would Windows 365 negate the need to use any sort of third-party AV or other security products then?
Well, because if you're using it in a virtualized session, everything's isolated to the cloud, so nothing's touching the disk. I can double check on that. I mean, obviously, I mean there is. We would always recommend having.
You'd still ideally, you wouldn't just have 365 desktop. You would be back-ending onto something else potentially in Azure for the line of business applications. So yeah, you certainly need an additional security layer there.
Yes, well, so there's two different options. So there you've got Windows 365 for business and you've got Windows 365 for enterprise. So with Windows 365 for business, there won't be any Azure integration, only with Windows 365 Enterprise. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I see. Okay.
Yeah, but absolutely no, you are right. I mean, of course, I'm not saying this will remove the need for any other security, but it does mean that certain elements of security potentially wouldn't be required. Obviously, there will be kind of key things that you would want to keep, of course, but there could be significant cost savings on security outlays by utilizing M365. But no, very good point. Thank you for making it.
Okay.
Any other questions whilst we're at that point? That was a fantastic one. Anything else? No, we're all good. Okay. So, where was I? So effectively, what does this mean for your business workforce? Well, Windows 365 is great for organizations end to end, for end users, for the business, and for IT. Now, as we mentioned, with Windows 365, users will have access to their personalized Windows experience. Being able to stream this Windows 10 desktop to any device. But effectively, business needs are met, notably by enabling hybrid work scenarios, but then also unlocking potentially new user-based scenarios while keeping your business running and while your environment might be changing. Again, we've seen the amount of change that's gone on in the world in the last couple of years, and again, being able to enable a workforce to have that level of flexibility is going to be unmatched. And again, we spoke earlier about Azure Virtual Desktop, and I've got a slide on this a little bit later on, but effectively really highlighting why a customer would use Windows 365 over AVD. So Windows 365 is designed to be more of a turnkey solution. So effectively for SMB customers that don't have a huge amount of IT or technical resource, customers that don't need to be joining this to any additional Azure services, customers that don't need to be using GPU or HPC enabled virtual desktops, then Windows 365 can be potentially a better fit. In terms of pricing, now pricing is determined by what size machine you go for. Now, you don't have the same amount of flexibility with Windows 365 that you do with AVD. With AVD, you've got literally a list of hundreds of virtual machines in varying specifications. There is still a vast range available with Windows 365, but you can see it kind of goes into these categories of 8 virtual CPUs, 4 virtual CPUs, and 2 virtual CPUs, and then a mixture of storage and RAM options. So these are the choices that you've got. So up to a maximum, so the highest configuration you can have in Windows 365, for example, would be 8 virtual CPUs, 32 gigs of RAM and 512 gigs of storage, which I think you'll agree is no slouch. That would be an incredibly powerful virtual machine. And of course, the benefit that this can be run on a multitude of different devices. But I realize these are all just kind of, you know, numbers and figures. What does that equate to in real terms, in terms of what sort of customers? Well, considering the 2 virtual CPUs, well, that we would feel would align more to customers that maybe have short-term workforces, seasonal workers, you know, like seasonal customer service stuff, where they don't need to be doing like insane amounts of kind of CPU processing or anything like that. So that's kind of where this sits. For your common or garden office worker, your mobile work professional, things such as the 2 CPU 8 gig model. Again, that's kind of where this sits. So again, office workers, we've got things like market researchers, government, that sort of thing. So again, giving you an idea of where this sits, and then all the way up to the other end of the scale with our high performance, high performance virtual desktops available within Windows 365. Things like software developers, engineers, designs, creators, architects, again, people that need a huge amount of power and performance, we've got something for those guys too. Obviously, if the workloads you're discussing with customers, if the workloads exceed what you're seeing on this list, then absolutely an Azure virtual desktop conversation would probably be more pertinent to that customer. But this kind of gives you a good idea of where these machines sit and really kind of who they're for. And as you know, organizations have a variety of needs and user scenarios to be able to support. The Windows 365 Cloud PC, again, is designed to be versatile and meet the needs of several workforce scenario needs, some of those scenarios that we looked at just a moment ago. Now, some of the user scenarios we hear from customers frequently are around hybrid and remote work, temporary workforces, and BYOPC, which stands for Bring Your Own PC programs. That's something which also has been growing in popularity. I don't know if anyone else has kind of noticed this in the channel, but BYOD has become incredibly popular. And again, making sure that people can use their own devices for work purposes without necessarily introducing security risks into the organization is something that a lot of customers should be looking at. We see that hybrid remote working, as you know, is really a normal mode of work for many people nowadays. Companies now just don't need to limit where employees work or live, but of course they want to make sure that all employees have secure access to company data, applications and content. We see temporary workforces are common for things such as we mentioned contractors or seasonal workers, where onboarding and offboarding, it needs to be agile and quick for an elastic workforce. That has never been easier with Windows 365, because if I need more desktops, I just go onto the console and spin up X amount. And then once that contract has come to an end, I just go back into the console and just turn them off again. So it does give a huge amount of flexibility. And as we mentioned, bring your own PC, again, that has been growing in demand. And of course, we want to make sure that people using their own devices are doing it in the most productive, yet the most secure way. Now, I mentioned a moment ago that there are 2 different versions of Windows 365. So there's Windows 365 Business and there's Windows 365 Enterprise. Now, I'm not going to run through these line by line, because again, that's not going to be particularly interesting. But Windows 365 Enterprise, again, you're able to deploy and manage this through Microsoft Endpoint Manager. So a lot of enterprise IT admins, and maybe some of you on this call, you'll be familiar with MEM. So that is effectively where you would be managing Windows 365 through Endpoint Manager. If you want to align Windows 365 to any cloud workloads within Azure, you absolutely can do that within Windows 365 Enterprise. And it also supports things like Azure Active Directory join or hybrid Azure AD join as well. So a lot more of the enterprise capabilities that you would expect to find in things, you know, like E3 and E5, you will get in Windows 365 Enterprise. But again, let's not take anything away from Windows 365 for Business. The fact that it's designed to be simple to get started with. You can choose your OS, whether you want it to be Windows 10 or Windows 11. The administration portal has been simplified. Effectively, it's just a bunch of sliders, effectively. So it makes it very quick and easy to manage. And it does support native Azure Active Directory join as well. And like anything else that has the word business in it from Microsoft, it is of course limited to 300 users as well. There is also, I should mention, there is also a discount as well. If you are putting Windows 365 onto a device that is already running Windows 10 or Windows 11 Pro, there is actually a small discount as well, which can be claimed. And just to give an example of some of the features with Windows 365 versus Windows 365 Business versus Enterprise, sorry, this kind of gives a nice breakdown into what you're getting with both. And again, I'm not going to go through this line by line again because it won't be a particularly interesting story, but of course this will be really good for resource. So we've spoken about a couple of different solutions on this call. We've spoken about Windows 365, Azure Virtual Desktop, and Azure Virtual Desktop with Citrix and VMware. And we're really kind of trying to illustrate what the right solutions are, because there will be confusion from customers around what is best for them. And so hopefully this slide kind of like illustrates like some of the key areas. So again, if they're looking for things like multi-session Windows environments, then of course that would have to be Azure Virtual Desktop. If they want huge amounts of flexibility and control over computing, virtual machines, all sorts. If they want to have like data residency, being able to spin up resources or virtual desktops that are hosted in different locations. If they want to set geo policies on where data is stored, once again, that can only be done in Azure Virtual Desktop. Windows 365 is absolutely optimized for simplicity. So whereas Azure Virtual Desktop is all around flexibility, Windows 365 is built for simplicity, for being able to get started. As I said, it's designed to be a turnkey solution. Literally, it's bought, it's deployed, it's set up, it's ready to go. And of course, the key thing and why this has been popular with a lot of customers is you don't need any VDI experience or skills. Because like I said, setting this up is just a bunch of sliders for doing this. So getting it up and running is very, very easy indeed. And of course, if customers are looking at merging an existing cloud solution such as Citrix or VMware, then of course it is going to be Azure Virtual Desktop, because we can't link Citrix to Windows 365 currently. Is that something that's going to happen in the future? Who knows? But currently, if they're looking to do hybrid cloud, it would be Windows Azure Virtual Desktop. This is just the same slide again, but just kind of a bit prettier. I thought I'd remove that. My apologies. Now, I realize there's a lot of information which we've covered in this session today. So I do have a whole load of resources. So again, you can check all this stuff out. We've got blogs around AVD and Windows 365. There's some tech blogs, so some more technical information. We've got some results from Inspire as well, talking about Windows 365 and how it's been built for this new world of work. So some really good stuff in there to get your teeth into and understand the value proposition of what Windows 365 is offering to customers. Now, this session is a little bit shorter than advertised, But that is effectively it from me. Does anyone have any questions at all on anything that we've been through in the last hour and a bit?
All good from my end. Yeah.
All good? Sabrina, I don't know if you've got anything, or David in...
You covered
No, I
everything
don't
there,
think-
Ed. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you did well on that one. And then, yeah, in terms of what's next in this course, we've the technical session is now remote for the hybrid work one. So if anybody's interested in that, and then we've obviously got the marketing sessions that are coming up as well.
Of course, is there a technical session for this one as well?
Yes, there is. Yeah.
Fantastic, excellent. So anyone that wants to again learn more of the technical capabilities of Azure Virtual Desktop and Windows 365, you should absolutely check that out. But thank you all very much for coming along. Hope this has been a useful overview of Azure Virtual Desktop and Windows 365 and how it can help workers in the new modern hybrid workspace. If you do have any questions, or if you do want to speak to anyone, whether it's around sales, technical, whatever it might be, the details are on the screen for the CSP team. So you've got csp@tdsynex.co.uk, and of course the phone number. Please don't hesitate to reach out. They've got a ton of resource and expertise there to help you drive this within your own customer base. So please reach out if we can be of any assistance. But and yes, Damon, yes, a copy of the slides will be winging its way to you shortly after this. So yes, that will be coming. So all the slides will be available. But that just leaves me to say thank you all very much, and hopefully I'll speak to you all again soon. Until then, take care. Thank you.